All right, so I'm sure you are aware of what we are talking about. It's that time of the year again where we get to see our women's football club dazzle on the continent. And what is the biggest club competition for the women's on the continent as well? We saw the first edition in Egypt and then the second one in Morocco. Tell me what inspired the decision to come to West Africa? What is in store for West Africa?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me and giving the women's football a voice. I think with Cote d'Ivoire being a host of the the main African Cup of Nation, and being one of the starters of women's football competition, and West Africa in general being the force of women's football. It was time to take it from the North African region, which has hosted two times the competition back to back in Egypt and Morocco, to move it to the West African nation. And I think it's a big chance. I believe it's a big chance for the West Africa to showcase their strengths and to showcase their hospitality, I guess.
All right, so the tournament is taking place in two venues that will also form part of the venues for the Africa Cup of Nations next year. Could you tell me about these two venues, Kohogo and San Pedro?
I think it's important to note that when we take the competition into these venues, we are also thinking about the women's girl and thinking about empowering the women child in the area. We're not taking it to Abidjan because we know that for a long time, in the capital cities of each country, we have a good involvement of women's football, but now we are taking it to, let's say, the small cities and to the south and the north of the country. So it's in a way to empower the girl child in that area and to grow women's football in that area. And it's also to showcase that the competition can be held in small venues. And also, it's a testament for the next competition, which is the AFCON.
I think even on the continent, I'll take it from Ghana where I am. We've seen the development of women's football on the rise in the last few years. We talk about what you've seen the national women's national team do, what the junior sides have done in women's football. It's quite staggering. So tell me, and we also saw the performance of the African teams when they mounted the stage at the recently ended World Cup in New Zealand and Australia. Tell me, how has this Women's Champions League impacted their performance on the global stage?
I think the Women's Champions League was a key in terms of developing the local leagues. When we are having a continental competition, we are saying to the member association, now it's time for you to invest in your league so that your clubs can be competitive in the zonal qualifiers as well as in the final league of the Champions League, in the final tournament of the Champions League. And it has shown us actually that the leagues are competitive, the clubs are competitive, because each year we are having from 5 to 6 new teams in the final tournament, and we are having, except from the north and the south, where we had Sundowns repetitively in the south and as far in the north. All the teams have been new from the CAF region. All the teams all year in the West region, we have new teams. So it showcases that the leagues are strong enough and competitive enough. And if you see the performance of Morocco in the World Cup, and if you see half of the teams coming from the Champion League champions as far, that is a testament to the competition. Also, Sundowns having a lot of representative in the national teams participating that participated in the 2023 Women's World Cup. It's a testament for the competition. More than that, also we are insisting on professionalization of the teams, the clubs. I think this is a key aspect for us as CAF and as development. We are training coaches, we are training instructor, women football instructor. We just came back from a back-to-back women coach educators and instructors course, which a Ghanaian, actually, I think Joyce was there. And before that, Mercy, the former coach, was there for the Iliad. We're developing the coaches. And we are now saying in the Champions League, in the Club Champions League, if you want to participate, you have to have a club that's coached by a C or a B, a D, a C, a B, and A licensed coach. We are making sure that the coaching development and the professionalization of the clubs are growing. We are saying, please, if you are a club competing in the league, you have to have a contract. You have to have a medical system for your players. You have to pay your players. You have to have a contract for the coach. The coach needs to be educated. You have to have a contract that you are playing in a stadium or in approved playing ground. So we're saying all of this to make sure that the women's football structure is changing and the women's football structure is professionalizing. And I think the Champions League has been a big tool for us to do this.
I was going to still on this on the answer you gave me. I was going to add a follow up. You mentioned the fact that Sundowns and then are two teams that have repetitively been in a competition. In those regions, is it the case of maybe the other teams not investing much or not putting up a good show to challenge these two teams?
I think it also for me, this is my personal opinion, of course. I think it's what you're doing in terms of developing the club and the club's philosophy, of course. But that doesn't mean that the other clubs are not competitive. I mean, now we have a team from Casablanca participating in the Champions League. Um, this club, Sporting Club Casablanca, is a very tight competitive competitor to Asfar, and I'm sure with the experience they will gain now in the new competition, they will be more competitive. I believe it's the philosophy and also the players they have in the squad rather than the country. I believe both countries and more a lot of countries are investing more in women's game. We have seen Zambia coming up, Burundi, Tanzania, and Uganda in the East African nations. Of course, we have Nigeria, Ghana, and we have seen that two times the Ghanaian teams beating a Nigerian team to make it to the final, with Hasakas being the first one, and even Hasakas going as far as beating everyone and reaching the final. So I think the more we invest and the more the club is keen to have to invest in players' development, the more the champion they become.
You mentioned it has to do with the players they have, and I'm looking at around my environment. There's this edge to play for some of these clubs from in the among the Ghanaian players, because in recent times I've seen two Ghanaian players move to as far in the presence of Blessing Shine and then Mafia Nyame, who recently moved to. I think it's a good thing. Now let's continue. When you start something new, there's a bit of opportunity and something that could be going wrong, or you face some challenges at some point. What do you see as a future for Women's Champions League in Africa, and what do you envision as the biggest opportunities and challenges?
Where the opportunity will be growing the competition, making sure that we're giving more clubs a chance to participate in the final, and also making sure that the zonal qualifiers are strong because I believe that we're still a bit far away from home and away matches because we have to make sure that our clubs are financially sustainable before we can move to home and away matches. And the zonal qualifiers are working very well. So finding sponsors is a challenge. So we need to bring more sponsors to the game and to the Champions League, and making sure that they are strong and making sure that we're giving every country an opportunity to participate in the league. Like last year, we have 34 countries participating in the zonal qualifiers, but still we need to grow the numbers. So those are the opportunities and the challenges I see.
You talk about the qualification process. I wanted to know, is there a particular reason why we have opted for the zonal qualifiers? Because unlike the men's game where you have probably a team from Ghana travels as far as probably Tanzania or Morocco to play these teams that qualify. In the women's game, we see we see them in zones, grouped. Is that a reason behind this decision?
Yes, well, as much as the women's game is progressing and we are attracting enough sponsors, still, our clubs are dependent on the state's fund mostly, and they are dependent on an investment from an individual or a state or a company. And we have to know that traveling in Africa is not cheap, and you spend in one trip up to 100 or 200,000 US dollars. So we need to have that sustainability. Our clubs need to be financially sustainable before we start the home and away games. Because if we start that, a club will travel once and will not repeat the second round. So the zonal qualifiers, in a sense, is to make sure that we have that stage of competition, still avoiding the financial burden a home and away competition would have provided to our clubs.
All right, so sorry to be bothering you in terms of comparing it with the men's game, but then we've seen the creation of the African Football League for the men like recently, and it's had some good reception throughout the games that I have watched it. Are we looking at a time where we could have the women's game also develop the same competition and then have our topmost teams compete at that level?
I think for women's game right now, our emphasis lies on developing the competition. This competition, bringing more sponsors, making it profitable, and breaking even in terms of finance. Before we move to the club competition like Super League or the African League, the African Football League. More also, our focus is making sure that we have a final competition for our under 20 and under 17, so that we have the career pathway for our players. They can transit from school football, which Africa and the CAF, the Confederation of Africa, has been established. I think it has been established for 2 years now, 3 years now. So making sure that the transition from school football to under 17, under 20, and the senior national team is matched. So our focus is really in terms of making sure that the club competition is growing, and on the side, we are making sure that the national team competition, especially the under 17 and the under 20, is established and is sustainable. That is our focus right now.
All right, so I'm glad you addressed these issues. But then since the introduction of the Women's Champions League, what changes have you seen in women's football in Africa? Obviously, you've talked about some, but there are some aspects that you've also not touched on. So what significant changes have you seen?
Um, First, like I said, the professionalization of the clubs in the environment. We are now having more leagues in member association. Right currently we have more than 42 member association having a league, a competitive league. And we see more investment also coming to the women league. More clubs are having sponsors, separate sponsors, and more leagues are having a title sponsors, like the league in Cameroon, in Tanzania, or in South Africa. We have seen also, I think, a lot of media coverage. There's a lot of media interest and media coverage interest. We've seen the girls actually now are thinking in professional way. It's not just playing in clubs in your regular leagues. Now, if you win the regular league, you are going to Africa, the African Champions League for women. So I think we have seen that the competitiveness have grown. The national teams are impacted. We have seen new national teams or competitive national teams coming up. What else? I think we have seen a lot of development. It has given also our girls an opportunity to be scouted and play in the European leagues. So I think there's a lot of growth since the Champions League, and it's the third season. So I cannot wait to see what we can do in the 10 or in the 15 edition of the Champions League.
You know, I watched you probably list the changes we've seen, and then I'm like, oh, let this woman talk about fans also going to the stadium. And for my country, there's a bit of people now showing interest in the women's game. Obviously, that has to do with maybe some things they are seeing in the men's game that has not probably gotten the attention than compared to what the women's game is seeing. In the foreseeable future, what do fans stand to get from probably watching the women's game?
I am sorry not to mention the fan interest. You are right. The fan interest have grown a lot tremendously, and we have had a record-breaking attendance last year in the women AFCON, and also a lot of attendance in the Women Champions League final. I think the fan interest has grown because of the Champions League. I believe it has given some impact in terms of how the fans are engaging. When they watch, I feel like when they watch the women's game, fans see pure football. Women plays football. There is no falling. There is no. I mean, it's the purest football ever. I would say that. They just want to play the match, the best as they can do, and they just want to enjoy when women are playing. So when fans are going to the game, they will see the best part of the best football. So yeah.
So we are back to Cote d'Ivoire where the third edition will be happening. Are there any specific initiatives or programs that CAF is seeking to implement at the tournament?
Yes, so always when we do competitions, now we do legacy programs, and these legacy programs are to make sure that through competition we develop women's football. And now we are training 34 referees for this competition. The referee departments are working on capacity building for the referees. We are also working on capacity building for the team managers, the club managers. It's very important that they understand what club management is, and the new aspects of club management, especially club management related to women football club management. We will also be delivering a workshop on the training female athletes, because the anatomy of women is a bit different than men, and a woman is not just a small man. We need to emphasize on the hormonal change a woman experience, the pregnancy, how a player can have a child and come back to football. All of that will be taught to our medical and the team's medical and physiotherapist, as well as coaches. So we are providing this kind of initiatives to make sure that there is a whole 360 degree of development in women's football.
All right. I know you've talked about financial sustainability and then the need to build these competitions to the level that we can attract more people on board. But then, in your capacity as the head of women's football at CAF, are there any plans to extend the number of teams that play in the Champions League, considering the increasing rate of the game?
Yes. The question is the prize money?
No.
I think
I'm asking if there are any plans to extend the number of teams that play in the competition, considering that the women's game is growing across all parts of the world.
Of course, we have a plan, but we have to make sure, like I said, that we need to bring more sponsors and more finance to the competition before we can progress. But yes, it's in plan to grow the number of um, participants in the final tournament. I think when we talk about also finance, you know that we are providing for the second time in a row, we are providing prize money, and every qualifier will get $100,000 if they are qualified, or if they finish the fourth place of the competition. And it's 150 if you finish third, and 200, and then goes to 400,000 for the winner. And we believe that this prize money will be used by clubs to develop women's football, and it's an investment that CAF is doing in terms of putting money, in terms of providing finance for these clubs so that they can work on their own development. But more than that, like I said, we need to bring more sponsors. We need to bring more public interest before we can grow and progress in terms of the number of the teams. But yes, it's in the plan. Once the competition is sustainable enough and break even, we will also move to increase the numbers.
I think indirectly you've answered my next question I was going to ask, but then I still want to ask. Yes, there's been provision for prize money. CAF is putting so much effort into ensuring that these clubs end something at the end of the day. But then for some of these players, what does the prize money like? What does it mean to them? For the clubs who are struggling, who are making ends meet just to be at the tournament? How well do you think this prize money will affect the game?
I think it's a lot of money when you talk about maybe because we know that in the local leagues it's still a bit um we're a bit far in terms of financial sustainability. So I think this prize money will support the teams to invest more in the game, like I said, and to invest more in the teams to make sure that their coaches are paid, the players are paid, and also to make sure that the financial administration is of the team is well administrated. So the prize money is, in a way, CAF is let's say CAF is investment in developing club football.
So I want to take you back a bit to the first edition where Hazak's ladies came on board. I don't know if I'm making you too uncomfortable, but then there was a situation where they complained about not receiving the prize money, and they went back and forth with CAF officials. Now, in your capacity, what are you doing to ensure that some of these things don't repeat itself again?
Unfortunately, for the first edition of the competition, we didn't have a prize money, and that was stated to the clubs. We have introduced the prize money from the second edition, which was last year in Morocco, the 2022 edition. Um, of course, the prize money will be also available and will be paid this year. But moreover, like if we are getting more sponsors and if we are getting more financial support from our sponsors, of course, we will be increasing the price. But I don't think it will be now. I think it will be in the further future. Um, like I said, the first edition of the competition, we didn't have a prize money, so I think that's just my answer.
All right, so for anyone who is now new to the CAF Women's Champions League, and for those who have been following for long, I know CAF has a program. So what is the CAF Women's Champions League General Program? What is it about?
Well, the program is the Champions League will start in the 5th of November and will finish on the 19th of November. We have the group qualifiers followed by the semifinals. The semifinals will start from the 15th of November. So it's going to be very excited, and it's going to be, I think, a very competitive football in this edition.
My last but one question before I let you go. To the media who have not shown so much interest in the CAF Women's Champions League, what are your words of encouragement for them?
I think you're missing out. I think they're missing out from the best football ever, and I'm encouraging them to come and watch the best football because I believe that these girls are bringing the best of African football. So yeah, please do follow up the women's football competition from the 5th to the 19th of November.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Kram. It's been nice talking to you this morning, and we hope that the next edition, which we'll be seeing from next month, will go as you have planned very well on the continent.
Thank you for having me.
All right.